Hello, now we are live. Welcome to the webinar with Duke Duchscherer. Me, Marta Kłaga, and Jürgen Licht are your hosts today. We wish you meaningful and pleasant and joyful time. First, about some technicalities. You can write questions in a general chat. On the right side of your screen, you should have a chat, and we would really welcome that you give us some sign that you are there. So we really know that we are not all alone here. And I have enormous pleasure and a little bit of nervousness to welcome Duke Duchscherer, who spreads the idea of restorative circles around the world. So how did it all begin to you?
Well, hello everybody who's there, seen but not seen, but held by all of us. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you, Marta and Jürgen, for making this possible. And I'm really grateful to have this chance to share a little bit, and excited to hear from the other participants. How did it all begin? Gee whiz, there's a number of things. For me, it actually started in the 4th grade, believe it or not, when how I remember it is a priest came into my class and shared about work he was doing in Guatemala, and something in me said, that's what I want to do. And I sort of followed that path. I may have judgments about it being fairly circuitous to get there, but that's kind of where it all began. And certainly was kind of following that aliveness in me, throughout all of my life. But I think what's pertinent for today is, one was a big step was nonviolent communication and learning about nonviolent communication and how to, as best I'm able, live from that consciousness, that state of being, where trying to understand my own needs and the needs of others and see the humanity of everyone involved, even if I'm in conflict with them. That certainly was a big step forward for me. And then I think the step forward into the reconciliation work, especially with groups and communities in conflict, that came out of doing nonviolent communication work in some conflict areas and post-conflict areas, and seeing the tremendous need and the tremendous challenges that people were facing, and wanting to find a way to help groups work through those challenges together, sensing the power of that, but not knowing how to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's when I came across Dominic Barter's work in Brazil, in the favelas and things, and started up a dialogue with Dominic. And the more I learned about his work, the more I saw the great potential of it answering some really important questions I had, particularly around the great power I experienced in personal healing or interpersonal healing in NVC, and how do we bring that power of healing to groups. And that's one of the things that Dominic's work really helped me to begin to discover.
Mm-hmm. So I hear that first you really felt it in your guts that this is what you really want to do.
Yeah.
And you acquired tools for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I imagine that you went to observe, to learn from Dominic.
Yes, I went. I first started just a direct dialogue with him, just over Skype, and then I think he held a webinar class for many weeks that I took, and then he started offering some trainings outside of Brazil, and I attended a number of those. And while I was attending those, I had the great fortune of being invited into a local university where I live. To help them. They were very interested in setting up a restorative justice program for conflict on campus, and I ended up being a part of that, and so got to get some firsthand experience quite early on, which was terrifying and thrilling, both.
what stands out for you from this first of your experience with such a group, like going really live, not in practice group, but live people in real conflict?
Yeah, I think it was that the first time, and I think it stayed with me all along, is the how amazing it is that people like find the strength and the courage to come and sit together even though they're in conflict with each other. That's one thing that really stands out for me even to this day, because it's for me it's I think for many of us, we didn't come with a background of having worked through conflict and liking the consequences. We often hide away or run away or pretend it's not there or in some way try to avoid it. And so I don't think many of us have that experience of walking towards conflict and liking the results of it. So I think it's often pretty, emotional and intense to do that. And so for people to be willing to do that is, I always stand in awe a little bit of the strength and courage that people seem to muster. I think that's one thing that really stands out. And the other thing is the healing power. I mean, even the very first circle I did, I can so clearly remember, one gentleman who was very, very strong character, very big individual, and was, basically certain that the whole fault laid with the other group, and it was all their problem and their fault. And to watch his transformation over the circle, where by the end he was recognizing that he had a part in what had happened, and that some of his choices and his actions actually contributed to the conflict. And to see that transformation in him, and time and time again, that's also something that I stand in awe of a little bit every time it happens. It's very powerful.
Yeah, like it's magic, which repeats and repeats itself.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously every circle is different, and we never know what direction it's going to go. But frequently, if we create the right conditions, the right container, people will walk in that direction that often leads to some kind of transformation. And, at times it can seem quite miraculous, at least from my view.
Yeah. And you are talking about the container, which is one thing. And the other is like the procedure, the steps to do. So what is it so important about this container you are talking about?
Yeah, I think that's, one of the brilliant things that Dominic brought, certainly at least to my awareness, is the idea of, creating a restorative system where, ideally ahead of time, we create a set of agreements about how we want to work with conflict, recognizing that conflict is natural. It's going to happen. We all see the world a little bit differently. So, we're going to bump into each other from time to time and struggle to find our way through it. I mean, we often find our way through it naturally, but there are times, especially, when bigger things get triggered, where it's hard for us to find our way through. And so to have a set of agreements about how we want to deal with those times when they happen, that kind of already creates, what I call a container, a holding space, or a kind of that set of agreements that really can allow us to go very deep into our emotions and bring up our pain and even our rage at times, and to have it be held in a way that we don't kind of all go flying out in all directions and go running and screaming, that we can kind of be with it and deal with it. And there's, that system building is a big piece of, along with the process that helps create, in my experience, quite a powerful container that can, hold a lot of pain if that's needed.
So creating the container, it's the process of really putting restorative circles as a system in organization or community. And I imagine, or what I read, you do sometimes these interventional circles.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference? What is basic for you to decide to do the circle?
Yeah, well, it's not uncommon. We're all human beings, and we often don't enjoy, walking towards conflict unless we've had those positive choices. So it's not uncommon that sometimes, groups or communities will come to me or my colleagues or whatever after the conflict's already happened and gone a long way down the road, where there's already quite a bit of pain and maybe there's even some kind of split in the community, and everything. It's not ideal in the sense it's a stronger container to be able to do that up front, but sometimes people, don't recognize the need or find the willingness to move towards conflict until it's kind of right in our faces, and it's really hard. You can't kind of avoid it or get away from it, or the consequences have become too great. So in those cases, I and my colleagues will sit down, with those communities and explore together, aside from this conflict, what is the ideal way you would like to deal with conflict if you could choose that, and kind of explore that. And one of the beauties of Dominic's work is that he's given us an example of how communities have done that, what the concrete process looks like. So, when we talk to communities about how would you ideally like to work with conflict, they might say things like, well, we want everyone involved to have a voice and to be understood, or we want to have concrete actions come out of this, not just talk and talk. So when they say things like that, the beauty of Dominic's thing, what he's done is he showed one way that a community can put into concrete practice answers to those questions. How do you get everyone involved in that's impacted by the conflict? How do you come up with concrete results at the end? And so he's answered a number of these questions. And so if there's already an ongoing conflict, I'll start with those questions and then maybe share a little bit about how Dominic has answered those in Brazil, and then explore together how they would like to do that, given that they have, a model to go off of, but not necessarily copy. So they may pick some aspects of it that really work for them, and they may, make certain shifts or changes to them that seem to be supportive for their cultural, religious, community sort of value background.
Yes, so I understand that you show them the process, how Dominic does it, and then you give them choice. Does it work for them or not? Reading on your website, there was this Furada Nono, if I pronounce it correctly.
Yes, from Nigeria, yes.
Yes. The dialogue between farmers and herders. And I was quite surprised to read that you give participants opportunity to change or modify this process as needed. And my question is, how far modification can go?
For me, I guess would be a combination of things, understanding what their modifications are and how they're addressing the needs or the hopes of that community. And then for me as a facilitator, also just checking in, am I comfortable with those modifications, as far as, do I think it's going to create the container and the environment that'll get them where they're hoping to go, that will help to create understanding or connection or whatever, the vision of this group is, or these groups are. So I want to also be sure that I'm comfortable, that I have a sense of trusting, that what changes they're making are going to support the overall thing. And if I don't, then I would, share that with them, and we could explore together and You know, maybe we'll find that I'm not the ideal facilitator for this, particular conflict, or maybe we'll find a way forward that, works for everyone, and myself included, and for all the participants. So it's pretty open and variable depending on kind of the needs and the cultural setting and everything. And for me, that's really important because it's tempting, especially coming from the West, to think that I know the right way to do things and what's the best way and everything. And I can certainly still forget that, but I try my best to remember that despite whatever my ideas are and stuff, I also want to learn from the culture in that, because they have traditions and they have ways of doing things that can be equally or maybe even more effective. And so really wanting to find something that works, for them, and so that they can feel real ownership of what they're doing. Because ultimately it would be wonderful and awesome if they could take it on themselves and build on it, and then, find their way forward doing it in the way that works best for them.
So this openness for their modification increases possibility that they own the process and it will not be Duke dependent.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's always the goal, and one of the goals that I have in mind is how do we support this community in finding their own way of working with conflict that really works for them and that they can use and make their own.
I have. I'm just bringing Melanie asks a question. She wants me to ask you this question, and it is about what can we do. It's about these containers you were talking about in the beginning. What can we do to create such containers in online communities?
In online communities, yeah. Well, that's definitely a challenge. I can imagine. I know we're even within CNVC ourselves. We're struggling with that at the moment. I think some of the things may at least translate. If it's possible to set up agreements ahead of time about how you work with conflict, maybe how you give feedback, even having some agreements about these things that everyone in the online group, kind of agrees to up front. That can certainly be really helpful. I know sometimes in circles when we don't have that container well established, or the system well established, that right at the beginning, before we start going into a conflict, we have a round where everyone shares their personal sort of intentions or reasons why they're choosing to be a part of this conflict. I mean, this dialogue around the conflict, and that can be super helpful because it gives a little window into each person's sort of heart or soul or intention of why they're there. And that again starts to build that safety, because we're starting to have a sense of connection with each other and seeing each other's true intention. So those are, some quick ideas. Also, how it's facilitated so that, that the deeper meaning or the needs is really received by speaker, and by the listener of a speaker. So where either the facilitator does that, depending on what methodology you use, or if it's like an RC where the speaker chooses a listener, and then the listener is invited time to time to say back just the deeper meaning or the most important point that they heard the speaker say in the last couple minutes. So either if the facilitator does that, or if you're doing it in the RC way where a chosen listener does that, that's also another way to make sure that the message sent is the message received, and both that the speaker feels heard and also that the listener is really taking in what's being shared by the speaker in a deeper way, so that it touches them and it isn't just a intellectual understanding experience.
Yeah.
So hopefully at least those are a couple of ideas I hope that contribute. to Melanie. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, I wonder if
I had Eva.
mhm.
She wanted to put a question. Melanie says yes, thank you. And
Great.
I lost Eva somehow. Maybe she comes back. Yeah.
I see, Eva, how to start working on conflicts with a big group, 30 people, in which the conflict has many layers and it's still growing.
Eva is no longer attending, so maybe we put this question a bit to the back.
Wait till she gets back on, you mean?
Yeah.
My preference would be to
answer. It's fine. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Can you say it one more time just so I can retake that in?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I would like to remind the participants that there is a chance to have the mic and the camera on and to
I love that.
ask. Yeah, we would really love to see you. That there is a chance to ask your question personally. So Eva, if you want, you can.
Eva, I've given you the permission on your mic. You need to turn it on, which is on the top of the screen.
Okay.
I hear you.
Yeah, you can hear me? Hi.
Yeah.
Hello everyone.
Hello, Eva.
I just want to know how to work in school with many children. There is 30 in my group. They have smaller conflicts in this group, but there is few things that it's for all of these children. They are very connected with each other, and they suffer from others' pain. And I don't know how to start work with them if they are so not engagement, sorry, it's not this word. Yeah, if they are
affected by that.
Yeah, affected. Thank you. This is my word.
Yeah. So this is a classroom setting where the children are pretty close, it sounds like, but have had some conflicts that sound like are still lingering or affected their ability to feel safe with each other.
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't know, you may already be doing this, but a couple things that come to mind. One is if they haven't already been kind of used to sitting in circle together and talking in a circle way, that sometimes, I know classes that I've worked with and also heard about start very simply by sitting in circle and just sharing things, taking turns, maybe even having a talking piece where they pass an object from one student to the next. Each one has a chance to answer, some simple basic questions, what's your favorite experience from the summer, or what's your favorite animal, or just some simple things that kids can feel really safe talking about, just to get used to talking in a circle and listening to each other when they're in a circle. And then kind of slowly moving to, questions that maybe are a bit more personal, going into more personal, how they're feeling about certain things and sharing like that. That's one place that I know often a lot of classrooms have started, just to get kids more comfortable with the whole way of being together.
Thank you. I know how to work in circles because we do it in my school.
Great.
Yeah, I know. I'm really proud of it.
Yeah.
And from them. But my problem is that they are suffer from the pain of each other, and what to do to make the pain maybe some smaller, or should I just make smaller groups or smaller circles from the beginning?
Well, and again, you may have already done this because you're talking in circle, but you might want to explore together with the kids, when a conflict happens, what's kind of, how would they like to see it handled, or how would they like to work with it? What kind of things would they like to see happen, to help them to begin to think about, well, how is a good way to work? What worked for me? What would like, even young kids, I think, can have some ideas about that, and then, put together a circle that maybe is looking at a smaller conflict, and maybe you'd start with a smaller subgroup of the class, just for ease and safety for the kids, based on kind of what you together with them came up with about how to do that. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I find really helpful is if there is a speaker and then a chosen listener, and that listener, even if they say back like a parrot, word for word, something about, me as a speaker, having someone say back my words, it really gives me a sense that that person cares about me and is with me, and that alone seems to have a huge help in creating understanding.
Okay. Thank you. I think I can start now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your question, Eva.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you a lot.
We have Maria who wants to ask a question. Are you open?
Hi.
Hello, Maria.
Hi, how are you?
Wonderful, and you?
Thanks for the opportunity, Duke.
Yes.
I think I got it right, but I'm not sure. You talked about walking towards conflict and liking it. How is that possible?
How is that possible? Right. So it sounds like maybe you've had the experience, and certainly I did for a long time, of where conflict was terrifying. And so walking towards it was like a suicide mission. So who would be crazy enough to do that? Is that similar to your experience, Maria? Oh, do we lose her? Okay.
You're good? Is Maria still?
Maria, can you turn?
Am I on?
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, as a facilitator, how can you be there and maybe even enjoy the conflict you are trying to facilitate? It is like I don't know. It's like it's a bit difficult to understand for me right now.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to give the impression that, going into, a circle around a conflict, that I'm, completely at peace, because there are many times when I'm, a little bit nervous or a little bit anxious about, I wonder how this is going to go. And that, I think for me, the enjoyment of it has come over time, as I've seen again and again how, creating those right conditions, creating a strong container and supporting people, that people are willing to step in there and really share, from the heart, or find the way to share from the heart as the process unfolds. And when that happens, then I see a lot of beauty in people, even in their anger or rage. That there's some really beautiful, reasons behind why they're upset, and similarly the other group, why they did what they did or said what they said. And when I see, two groups really understand those aspects, those hidden things that they didn't see before, then there's a beauty that unfolds, that then I that kind of takes me to the next circle, where it's like, okay, wow, I'm getting a chance to hang out with people. There's a spiritual saying that for me really sums it up, and it says that the holiest place on earth is where an ancient hatred has become a present love. And when I see that happen again and again, that's what gives me the energy and the willingness and the hope and excitement about working with people in conflict. Does that get to your question?
It does a little bit. It is hard to imagine how can that be, but yes, thanks.
Well, good luck with exploring that for yourself.
Thank you.
That steps in or connects with the question John has. She's on a mobile phone, by the way, and it appears as if on mobile phones I cannot open the mics for the people.
And
Okay.
usually on mobile it's 5 sometime later, so maybe it's better to read the question.
So the question Jan has, it's about what to do when you as a facilitator are in pain, or if you have very strong feelings about the conflict or one of the parties.
Yeah, great. Okay, I love that question. Yeah, thank you very much, Jan, for that.
The name is pronounced Jan.
Jan. Okay, thank you. Jan. Okay. Jana. Okay, yes. Okay. Well, I don't know about other facilitators, but I'm certainly a human being, and I am impacted by, my upbringing, my education, my cultural background, as well as by, what happens in the moment. So I'm going to have stuff come up for me, when I'm facilitating a circle. And I don't think I've ever been in a circle where that hasn't happened to some degree, sometimes very strongly, other times, to a smaller degree. A few things that come to mind. I mean, one part of the Restorative Circles process, as Dominic shares it, and I found incredibly valuable, is called the Facilitator Pre Circle, or it's basically when the facilitator sits down with another facilitator or a colleague outside of not a part of the circle, where I can explore, are there things going on in me? Maybe I have stories about the participant, or one group versus another group. Maybe I have stories about the process I'm about to use, or maybe I have stories about myself and my own capacities or capabilities. And it's a chance to look at those stories, to receive deep listening or empathy for those stories, and then to see if there's any actions that I need to take in relation to those stories. So one example for me is facilitating a circle in Ukraine, with right close to the about 15 kilometers in a small community, about 15 kilometers from the war front. And it was with a pro-Russian community, Russian-speaking, Russian cultural background, very pro-Russian, and Ukrainian army. And I grew up in Canada during the Cold War, so I had a lot of stories about what Russians are like. And so I spent a number of times going through these facilitator pre-circles, sitting down with someone and trying to unpack those stories that I'd heard about Russians, receive empathy about the needs of mine that were not met, that were coming from those stories, and see if I could really translate those stories so that I could see the humanness in all the people, not only the Ukrainians, but the Russian-speaking, Russian cultural people. So that's one thing that, that I find super supportive and really important to do, before every circle, even if I'm not aware of problems. And then, a large majority of the circles I do, and ideally all of them, I have a co-facilitator. So if in the middle of a circle, if something gets triggered in me, sometimes, it's such that I can deal with it on the spot, just kind of go internal and do what we call self-empathy, or just listen to my pain around that thing. If it's a bit bigger and I have a co-facilitator, often before we start, we have agreed on some kind of signal that if I'm currently facilitating mainly, and I get triggered, then I can hand it off to my co-facilitator temporarily so that they're kind of leading the facilitation for a while, so that I have a bit more space to take care of myself internally, you know. And there's been, you know, once or twice where I've said, okay, hey, can we take a break? And we take, you know, we actually, you know, stop the dialogue for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and I maybe go out and either take care of myself or with my co-facilitator, or, you know, call up a support person if I don't have that, to again, to receive that deep listening so I can work through it. And I also want to be open to the possibility that there may be times I do that and I recognize, you know what, I can't support everybody in the way I would like equally. And so on those occasions, you know, then I may need to step away from doing that circle. Maybe whatever's happened is too painful or too close to home, you know, for me to work with in the time I have or something. So hopefully that'll give you some ideas or answer some possibilities for yourself. Thanks for the question, Jana.
And did it really happen that you said, I cannot do it any longer, and you went out?
No, it hasn't happened, but I have had circles where I've had to have multiple sort of sessions with somebody, facilitator pre circles, you know, with somebody or a variety of people. And, you know, and sometimes, like, you know, right before the circle, I'll also do one, you know, right before we meet, something just to make sure I clean out. And and I have had an occasion where I had an emergency contact person that I could call, so in case during the circle, if I start to lose it. And I've had one circle where there was a co-facilitator and I, and we were both getting triggered. So we passed it back and forth, I think like 10 or 15 times during the circle, because we were both needing to take time out to try to reconnect to the humanity of everyone involved. And so, yeah, so sometimes it's taken more work than other times.
Yeah, so what it takes to be aware that you are triggered? Where is this moment when you say, I'm too triggered to go on? Because I imagine that when you are in this process, different emotions are present all the time.
Yeah. Well, certainly that's part of why, even, you know, in circles where I think I'm fine, I don't have any problem, that I do the facilitator pre-circle anyway, because sometimes just in opening myself to that possibility, I discover something comes up and I realize, oh, you know, I am thinking about that person in this way. You know, I hadn't realized. So I think that's really an important kind of way to check in with oneself, even if it seems like, oh, everything's fine, don't worry about it. Because I did that once, you know, I had a pre-circle set up to work with someone before the circle. They came to me and they said, you know, this and this happened and I don't think I can do it. Are you okay about that? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure, it's no problem. And then I went into the circle, and, you know, halfway through the circle, I realized there was one person I was struggling to understand what they said, like to hear the deeper meaning. And that's usually something that I have, you know, thanks to years and years of practice, I have a fair amount of facility with most times. And again, with one person only in the circle, I was really struggling to hear the meaning of that person, what they were saying, what it really meant underneath. And I realized, oh my gosh, you know, I didn't take care of this the way I needed to. So that's a bit more, you know, dramatic. Often it might be just more, I start to know I'm starting to have some persistent stories. Oh, wow, that was really rude of that person. And I keep thinking that over and over, and I can't seem to let it go. You know, I'm human. I'll have that'll come up in my head. Oh, yeah, that was really rude. Okay, yeah, I really want more care or respect. Yeah, okay, great. And then I can let it go. But if it's persistent in me, or I notice I'm feeling irritated towards someone, or I'm like not wanting to look in their direction, or there's some tension in me when I you know, look in their direction or something, or when I hear their voice speaking, things like that can often alert me that there's something more there that I'm needing to pay attention to. And that often comes out also in the pre-circle, you know. So often usually we have a pre-meeting before the whole group comes together. We meet separately. I will meet separately, or us facilitators will meet separately with each of the different sort of parties involved in the conflict. And so sometimes that's where I'll recognize that. So I'll take care of it again before we get to the circle, and and maybe have some awareness. In fact, in the last circle I did last week, I asked my co-facilitator, can you just kind of, when I'm facilitating, can you doubly monitor me, kind of like keep an eye, am I really getting the needs for this one person? Because I was struggling a bit hearing them. And if you notice that's the case, I invite you to step in and hear, more of what's their meaning, what's that underneath that. So that was another way I can handle it.
So this persistency, when you really cannot let it go, this is the signal for you. I need to do something about it.
Yeah, or there's judgments or stories or things coming up about a certain person, and they're not going away.
Yeah, not going away. Okay, Jürgen, do we have more questions from participants?
Melanie again. Melanie, are you on? Melanie?
Oh, hi, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It made me refresh and it took a while. So I'm just curious, if you have a circle and, let's say one person is going on and on and on, and there's not really a place to interrupt them, and you see other people getting restless. What do you do about stuff like that?
Yeah, so the challenge of when one person's taking quite a amount of space to talk and to share. For me, there's no right or wrong answer. It's more my sense of things in the moment. I think one of the most common strategies that I use is to interrupt, to invite the listener, the chosen listener, to say back the deeper meaning. So I might literally interrupt and just say, whatever, Anne, could you say back what you're hearing, Bill say? Because my experience, my belief, and my experience seems to corroborate that, is that when people talk for longer than I might enjoy, when they're not having a sense of being really understood or heard, and so trying to help that happen so that they don't need to keep saying the same thing, again and again. So that's probably the strategy I use most frequently, is because we've all agreed to this process ahead of time. They've agreed that someone, they're going to choose a listener, and that listener will say back to the person. So I kind of just support that happening, maybe a bit more quicker than the listener themselves might feel comfortable doing. Does that help at least give you one idea or one thought?
Yeah, that's actually really an amazing point that I didn't think of before, that people go on because they aren't sure that they're being clear or being heard, or their message is getting across. And so you have a listener for the whole group, or a listener for each person, or?
Again, it depends on what the group itself wants, but generally how I work with it, and most groups seem to enjoy it, is that whoever is speaking chooses a listener from amongst the group. So each speaker will choose who they would like to listen to them, and they may choose one person to listen for one part of what they want to say, and then choose another person to listen to another part of what they wanted to say.
Wow. I love that idea. I'm just imagining myself being a participant, and that experience of having the choice of like who will be my listener. Really empowering. Yeah. Thank you.
I agree. I think it's really empowering, because sometimes you have a certain person that, boy, you would love for them to understand you, and so you ask that person. Sometimes you'd really love some person to understand you, but it's really scary for you to talk to that person, so you choose to talk to someone else knowing they're going to hear you. but it's safer to talk to someone else. So that's really empowering to be able to ask who you want to ask in that moment.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have
Okay.
Rodrigo. Rodrigo, are you on? Rodrigo? We can't hear you. So if I find it, okay. He had a question. Hi, I'm Rodrigo. I have a question. I'm an NVC practitioner. My son, 12 years old, is in a classroom where there is a 14-year-old girl with a difficult history. The teachers are losing the connections with the children who are following this girl. I would like to mediate, but, and then, can we take that on, or?
Was that the whole question? It sounded like mediate, but
Yeah, it's not the whole question. And can we have Rodrigo on the mic, Jürgen?
I gave him the thing. He's obviously, so let's maybe he tries. Rodrigo, try again and just step in, yeah. And then, not to forget, I got reminded by Adam. Will you, before the end, and we are now already 10 minutes before end, will you before the end speak a bit about what will be the workshop in June about?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, sure. The workshop in June is 5 days we'll have to spend together to look at this whole idea of reconciliation. So I'm imagining we'll, begin by kind of exploring, what, each participant's sort of sense of reconciliation is, how that, what it means to them, what it looks like. Perhaps some of their experiences with that. Certainly, if not on the first day, that'll come out in the following days. And I'll share some of my understanding and experience, working with reconciliation in various ways and in various groups and communities. And then we'll be looking a lot at how do we put into practice, in concrete, practical ways, the reconciliation. So there's sort of 4 main components of reconciliation that we'll look at. One is healing, one is, restorative justice, one is truth-telling, and I'm completely blanking out on the 4th at this moment. It'll come to me in a minute. But we'll look at each of those and what are some of the skills and processes and things that we can do, particularly looking at groups and communities. I mean, there will be some stuff about individuals there, or it can extrapolate, but we'll look a lot at how do we concretely support healing or truth-telling or, restorative justice practices. How do we support those things to happen in practical ways in a group or in a community setting? So we'll look at those and then we'll practice those skills. And that will take, quite a bit of the days. There'll be other little topics that will intersperse there, maybe look a little bit at trauma and its impact on these kind of things, since we're often dealing with that. But that'll be a big portion of it. And ideally we'll have some chance to also look at things like, what does it mean to be a community, and what are things that help us stay strong and resilient as a community or as a group of people, because that's sort of inherent, I think, in reconciliation as I understand it. Anything else, Jürgen and Marta, that you want to add, having experienced it last year?
Melanie reminds us forgiveness is the 4th.
Yes, we'll definitely take a look at the whole idea of forgiveness, what that means to different people, and, what are some of the skills or processes that, at least I and others I worked with have found to be, supportive of moving in that direction, at least, or opening the possibility to forgiveness. Yeah, so thank you for, that's definitely another aspect of what we'll look at.
So what stand out for me also is lots of practice we had and lots of questions when you shared your experience. That was, from my experience of your workshop, that was really big part and important. And I hope that we will have it again in June.
Yeah, certainly. I love to share a little bit and then for us to dive in and practice the skills. And then I'll try to, when questions come up, try as best I can to kind of bring real world examples to speak to those questions as much as possible, because at least for me, that's where I've learned. That's where the big meaningful experiences have been for me. So hopefully they'll support others in their adventure of diving into restorative circles and restorative dialogues for themselves.
And what was important to me was, because you were talking about containers, and I remember well my experience of this container, which I looked at the whole week or the whole 4 days, were a container in itself. And it went on from breakfast to the evening. In a community life atmosphere, so even with conflicts which arose.
So maybe we will have some conflicts on the way that we could really work live.
That's right. And we get the chance to choose to walk towards them or run the other way screaming. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. And we plan to have some films in the evening on this processes, healing. I don't remember what were they called from different parts of the world. These commissions of reconciliation.
Yeah, last time we shared a film that looked at different truth and reconciliation processes in various parts of the world, and how those unfolded and what were some of the challenges for them. And we also looked at some reconciliation processes that have been used in Rwanda, was another film that we looked at. So those are some of the things that, we'll certainly make available to people to help kind of broaden and deepen their understanding of reconciliation, and hopefully, deepen what they may already know about it and their experiences, or begin to, go into that experience, that learning for reconciliation.
And these films showed how it could be, in reality, with really big conflicts. Shows the nations in half, which divides.
I have a participant of last year. I don't know if she is now shy. Are you turned on, Dini?
I don't know.
Yes. Hi, Dini.
Hi. Nice to see you. And my
nice to hear you.
question is, I would love to have a follow-up workshop where we can practice more what we learned last year.
Okay.
So maybe this year you have another group who will have the first, and then next year we can all have the follow-up.
I love that idea. That's one of my favorite ways of working, is kind of in a workshop environment and then going out and practicing, and then bringing that learning, back together so we can all kind of learn together from it. And so that sounds like a wonderful idea. Thank you for that possibility.
Yeah, because I buy something, but I need more, to learn again. I think I'm a bit afraid to do more now.
Yeah, so to have some support to bring your learning, the things that you loved about what you did and things that were difficult, and kind of, together kind of find, whoa, what's next, or how do I deal with this situation or that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So you're in
very much.
Yes. Yes, Dini, next year.
Yeah.
For more advanced. Yeah.
We do that.
Second
Maria
part of the
wanted to say something. Oh, no,
Mhm.
it's another Maria who wants to speak. Let me see. The one Maria, I just read it then. I can really recommend the workshop with Duke. I participated in one in Germany last year. I was really touched by Duke's way of sharing experience and creating a space of learning for me, beautiful experience. And April shares this idea of a follow-up. Rodrigo is asking, now Adam is saying something to Rodrigo. Conflict of your own son. How possible is it that you will stay objective? I take it because I think it is an interesting question. How can you mediate or how can you work on that when you are involved so deeply, like when it is your son?
Yeah, you're wondering about that, like if how directly you're involved, can you still hold the space for everyone? Is that what you're asking, kind of, or is being asked?
That is my interpretation now, or my own question now. That out of this, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. For me, again, I mean, you know, in the restorative circles model, the ideally the facilitators are not from outside their community. They're part of the community. They're usually part of what we call the conflict community that who have been indirectly impacted. You know, so, and as a facilitator, for me, it would come down to a lot of openness and honesty with myself. Can I truly support everyone, you know, else, particularly the person who may seem to have impacted my son directly? Can I truly support that person, you know, equally, and to go through a facilitator pre-circle and really see, is that a possibility? You know, if I'm directly impacted, you know, often, you know, we do step out if it's that direct. But, you know, again, it would be more just the honesty. For myself, I would go through a facilitator pre-circle, and then I would want to err on the side of caution. So if I have any doubt whatsoever that I could be fully supportive of everybody, then I think I would probably prefer to step out as a facilitator. I want to be a participant in that case, probably. But that's, you know, each facilitator needs to kind of make that call for themselves. It could also be, you know, another strategy that could potentially work is I'll facilitate it, but I'll have a backup person sitting right there with me. So if I realize I get partway into it and I realize, wow, you know, I'm just trying to prove that this person's wrong and my son has, you know, been hurt by them. Okay, let me step out and hand it over to the co-facilitator. That's another possibility that comes to mind. But I just want to, for me, I'd want to be really clear if we're going to have the kind of connection and understanding and transformation that's possible in a circle. I'd really want to make sure that the facilitator, whoever they are, supports everyone, you know, equally and sees their beautiful humanity behind their actions.
Given the time, I have first Rodrigo says, great idea, back up. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have two questions here, and I would like to close the session of questions now for the participants, if you agree, as we have only 2 minutes to go. So
yes, I guess so then.
So first one is from Adam. Duke, did you ever participated as participant in an RC?
Yes, I have. We've done little things with my family where I'm, you know, in RC terms, the author or the receiver. And then I've also been community member in I don't know, 4 or 5 circles I've been community member as a participant in the circle. And I think those are super valuable experiences because they, even, from a facilitator's perspective, I found them super valuable because they gave me insight and awareness of what it's like to be in those places in the circle, and how it feels and what it's like. So I found that, aside from just the benefit of having participated in the circle period, but as looking from a facilitator's point of view, it was really helpful to have had those experiences as well as, so I was just only ever a facilitator. It really gave me insight into the whole experience.
And Adam says, see both sides. Thanks. So great.
Yeah.
And the last question, this comes from April. What is the limited number of people, or the limit number of people in the RC when I'm only one facilitator? When I'm alone as a facilitator? How much can I do on my own?
Again, for me, there's no like hard and fast rule as far as it should be this number or else, more, forget it. It's a combination of things. The main thing that I base it on is my sense of my capacity to hold that space. And what goes into me determining that, are a number of things, probably more than I can recall off the top, but things like the intensity level of the conflict. Are we talking it's a quote unquote family squabble, or are we talking, someone's been killed, or, many people have been killed? So the intensity level of the conflict, the history, the length of the conflict, has there been, any connection or contact between the groups up to point, my own sense of my resourcedness, how resourced am I right now in this moment? What is my level of, trigger or pain in relation to this conflict, and how I can manage that. So it's any number of things can go into, that. Another thing is my sense of the participants. If there's trauma involved with some or all of the participants, then that would make me, as an example, would make me more hesitant to have a larger number, because I'm not sure I can hold the space if that comes up. Plus in the trauma situation, I often want to have at least one other co-facilitator who can help support a person who might need to leave the circle if it becomes more than they can be with in that moment. So, there isn't a hard and fast answer. All those things, then in the Facilitator Pre Circle, I sit with all those things, and I might say, what, I'm comfortable with, 7 people in this circle, and if they want more than that, then we're going to need to get another co-facilitator, or they're going to need to find a different facilitator than me, or maybe it's 20. I'm okay with, by myself. So there's really a number of factors that I all kind of take in, and then I sit with it and do the Facilitator Pre-Circle and see, where am I at? Does it feel like I can hold this space in the way I want, or do I need help? So hopefully that'll at least give some ideas to begin to think about as you explore the number that you feel comfortable with.
Rodrigo
Thank you for the question.
You ready?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Rodrigo wants to know if there is something coming up, a next workshop in Germany or Switzerland.
Not for me personally. I don't have anything planned immediately in either of those 2 countries. Certainly open to exploring those things, for the future, but I don't have anything in the immediate vicinity right now.
come to Warsaw. It's not that far, Rodrigo. And,
love to see you there. Sure.
Adam just writes it. I am quoting Adam. Come to Poland in June. And now we are 4 minutes over after 9 already. My close is we started with 43 attendees, and we still have now just 2 went off. So the time is over, and we should complete. But I celebrate that all people stayed for the whole hour. So I think this is really, thank you.
And Adam wrote that we stopped eating strangers in Poland, so you are safe to come here.
Thank goodness. Now I'm feeling better about it already.
Yeah,
I will post the link in the chat, having in mind also, unfortunately, we have some troubles with our website in the moment. So please try it, Rodrigo. Please try it in the next couple of days if it doesn't work now. Yeah?
Yeah, and we will send all of you who registered will receive an email about this workshop in June. And if you have any further questions, just contact us. Yeah. So I have the pleasure to end. Thank you very much. Thank you, Duke, for your presence, your wisdom, sharing your experience. And next questions you have, you may ask in June in Warsaw. Thank you.
And thank you to both of you for making this possible and for holding the space. And thank you for all that stayed and listened. I'm super grateful. Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Yes, so Jürgen, it's your time.
No, I don't want to end it because look at the general chat. It's amazing.
So
they come up. Wonderful. Niklas says wonderful.
Oh, Niklas. Hello, Niklas. It's so nice to hear those names and to connect those people.
Yeah. I have the feeling that a lot of our overlated people are there.
How wonderful.
Yeah. I really stop it now. So otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay.
So final goodbye and see
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Actually, I don't know how to stop it. Somehow it works, but
admin back.
End webinar. I push the button now. Yeah. Bye.
Yeah.